Regular Inmendum video production. Yay. Alright, so it's a combination of subjects, and I didn't really take any notes, but it's, did finish off with a video I haven't watched actually, entirely. This, whatever, Peter Erkey Roeder guy. Problems with Inmendum's philosophy. That's what it says, problem with Inmendum's philosophy. So he starts the video by basically just saying he agrees with my philosophy entirely and blah, 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 blah. And then he goes on to say what he's going to say, and I'll play what he's going to say. But the real context of this video is just the little comments by different people. So you have like people like Vic Mackey, who make arguments like, I'm only responsible for the mess I make. So whatever mess is in the world, not my problem. Victim being created by somebody else, not really my problem. I don't have a responsibility really to rescue anybody or save anybody or to do much of anything. I just have to worry about what I'm doing. So it's what's in it for me, with some little qualifier of yeah, I won't be overtly criminal. But in a sense, it just is. It's like if I can sell a retarded person, if I can fool a retard, they're bad, not my bad. Pretty much. Everybody else is responsible for their condition. If they're stupid, that's their problem, not my problem. I don't have to worry about it. All right, and then you got like Anticonavad, who's arguing that as he argues everything, this nihilist kind of position where nothing ever is anything, nothing is distinguishable from anything, and so he's basically doing this to progress now and pretending that progress isn't progress. That because we don't do it well, it means it can't be done well, is implicit in his argument. So because we had a couple of world wars and because we still have substantial problems in terms of finding a way to live together, progress, morphine, isn't worth it. Somehow we paid too high a price for it, or some kind of crap like that, or somehow it's inevitable that has these unintended consequences, and they will always ruin everything. And this is something that's written in his book of dogma. Because obviously the opposite philosophy would engage you in a obligation to use your best judgment to find correct answers to problems, rather than just pretending any answer will do, and especially the answer that's convenient for me is fine. So the only way you can make the answer that's to my convenience the right answer is you have to basically blow up all the other answers. And so that's Anticonavad's version of nihilism. And then there's Professor Anton. Silly mushy video. I should have played the end of his video because it's just the silly mushy bit at the end is just priceless. This love mush, and the video is called Kinds of Growth. So I'll load it. But good day, people. Good day, people. I love you. Just this kind of, I mean, it's just such a useless word in describing any kind of thing that's supposed to mean something in terms of respect. But to talk about growth, and then to talk about emotions, as if the emotions have something to do with growing. And really what growth is realizing that your emotions are crude, generally speaking. They're certainly almost exclusively self-obsessed. So our desire, our bigotries, our nepotism, our attachments are entirely, almost mechanically, biologically stupid, ignorant, unenlightened. And that's our tendency as a self-interested organism, as a piece of biology. And you have to understand that part of what growth would be this recognition that this mechanism makes you an asshole. And that tendency to be an asshole is not something you can get rid of. It's always going to be sitting there nagging you, this self-interest. It's always going to be getting in your way. And the only way you have any protection against it, the only way you grow in terms of your behavior, is to understand the liability of being a selfish, ego-driven asshole. And that's the real growth. And that goes for the growth of the human race itself. You know, we have to grow as individuals, but we have to grow as a civilization. And that's what's been lacking in the civilization, is that it hasn't found a foundation for its judgment that's rational. It's, you know, they're still clinging to idiotic religious dogma that says what's right and wrong. You know, rather than deducing the obvious. And it is obvious. It's not very difficult. I'm just saying this is still, you know, my growth, the biggest growth spurt in my life was around the age of 11, when I started to realize I was a selfish cunt. And it was occurring to me that every thought I was having was very manipulative, even regarding my best friends. Even though I liked them, and I, you know, certainly didn't want harm to come to them, if there was an ego contest, if there was some point where one of us could look good and one of us could look bad, I would tend to favor my own victory for no reason other than it would be mine. I would enjoy it because I had no previous to that understanding that if I really understood, I would understand that his happiness would be just as important as my happiness as a thing happening in the universe. So anyway, I wouldn't have had the language to articulate what I'm articulating, but I did have the language to say asshole. So I did look in the mirror, so to speak. I did take inventory. And in my opinion, that's growth. That's how you grow, is to sit there and stop. Because you can't grow when you're moving. Okay, to stop and to take inventory. And then you realize what growing is acknowledging the truth, is getting the bullshit out, really. The biggest part of growth is getting the weight of stupidity off of you, so to speak. So if you have to keep using some sort of metaphor, which I really don't want to do. I mean, growth is not really the thing we're talking about. We're talking about, this thing of becoming better or improving. The idea of I don't want to throw the word this idea of heading in that direction, the direction of perfection, the direction of the right versus wrong, the direction of maximizing efficiency, the direction of a cleaner design, finding the flaws in the design and redesigning until you get something that works better. You know, the first airplane didn't fly too good. You redraw it. It gets better and better. And so that's what I'm talking about. You don't talk about airplanes growing. Okay, they improve. And we improve. Our civilizations improve. And that's sort of a fact. So Anacondabide's playing this game as if, well, I'm going to compare ancient Greece to modern society or something. And he won't compare it in its realness, in the sense that he's not going to he's not going to include the smells, the raw sewage in the streets, all the lack of air conditioning, all the less than wonderful bits of living in those times, the parasitic diseases, all the just really quite not pleasant, and just live the Jedi version, you know, the 2-hour movie version of living as a rich man in, you know, 400 BC or something. It's a romantic perception of the reality, not a reality. But it really doesn't matter for the purpose of this conversation. The real purpose of the conversation is to compare us from where we were, what we came from. We came from a fucking dog. We came from a fucking salamander, mud skipper, a fucking fish. So by that standard, we have grown substantially. And the biggest part, in my opinion, of this growth isn't that we feel, it's that we think. And we can think in terms of, in a manner consistent with our reality, the reality that exists, or we can think in terms of just saying we're growing by having fantasies that are fairy tales, creatively growing, but not maturing. That's a kid does fantasies, okay? Somebody who's supposed to be mature in their growth knows that those are stories, and that's not the truth. And that the truth is probably going to ask something of you. The truth is going to burden you. Knowledge will burden you. Knowledge isn't fun. It's fun to acquire, but sometimes your ego can be involved. Like I'm having this argument about physics, and it's sort of a challenge. You know, because I'm this tremendous underdog fighting this, you know, this institution of Babel, and so I can put on my David suit and fight my Goliath, the ugly, one-eyed, silly monster of, you know, the religion, you know, of physics. And so it's a bit of an adventure, so there's a little bit of fun in that. But the truth of knowledge is that most of the knowledge you're going to acquire, most of the knowledge we will grow, our intelligence and our knowledge base and our information base, most of it is indelicate to our sensibilities. Most of it's an offense to the ego and to the stuff that makes us feel in control and powerful and passionate. The clinical truth doesn't make for good sex, so to speak. You kind of have to have a mystique of things. You have to see them as something other than what they are, for you to purely enjoy them. It's like there could be lampshades made out of Jew skin, and if you don't know it's Jew skin, they might be very attractive and well painted and lovely. But if you know they're Jew skin, game over. You're not going to enjoy the light anymore. You won't want to see by that light. It'll trouble you. So what I'm arguing, obviously, is that the truth is troubling. And as we become more enlightened and smarter about what we are, where we came from, what the nature of our psychology is. And this information's been around a long time, okay? I mean, Darwin and Freud, this is old knowledge. And it's kind of pitiful that, you know, in the last 100 years we haven't developed this into anything that you can see in the world in terms of a realization of what we are as animals and what we can be as intelligences. And instead the world seems to be getting just sillier and more trivial and more superficial. It seems that our entertainment is getting more gratuitously crude. Not just violent, but violent in the sense of what's the word? There's probably a word for just the spectacle of it. Just so petty, so trivial. just watching the fights, just watching somebody get defeated, somebody get humiliated, feeding off of that kind of shit. And that's clearly a negative impulse, not a positive impulse. Like sports and all the rest of the crap that people get caught up in. It's just a soap opera. They pick a character in the soap opera that they're going to root for. And, oh, will she survive her husband cheating on her? And will she be able to strive? And will she pass the test at work and get her doctorate? And, well, you know, and so you just pick your underdog to root for. And that's all sports is. It's just a more psychological, vicarious pornography of a kind. You know, live their life, not your life. It makes it a little bit closer, a little tied. It's a little better than a completely made-up fantasy because they can do this. They can feel, in a sense, the agony of defeat and the splendor of the grass and all of that stuff through these characters that are living lives. And this is another thing we can do because we're monkeys and because it was to our evolutionary advantage to be mimickers. And so we do that. Our psychology tends to do that, to copy, to cling. And that's one of the obstacles we have to fight, is that we're all raised by preposterous volumes of lies and nonsense. Fairy tales, nursery rhymes, kid movies, kiddie crap. And it's real crap. It's hard falsehoods. It's hard piles of lies and crap and Santa Claus and Easter rabbits. It's just a bunch of silly shit that doesn't properly contextualize anything, doesn't reveal the fact that the lampshade is made out of Jew skin. So there's lots of stuff in the room that has this problem tied to it. The truth, an ugly truth tied to it. And we raise the kids with all the lies. We just make lies up about why it's God's will. They must have sinned. You know, superstition, hokey pokey. And most especially, we're raised by the culture to think we are entitled to comfort and joy, somehow more than anyone else is. Somehow that this brain matters more, and that's somehow endorsed. There's no explicit argument made that no, that's not how it works. That it's quite silly to be celebrating winning, beating somebody else at something, or you know, all this stuff that we do to gain gratification that is just satisfying trivial, crude, bigoted, stupid elements of our sensibilities, like the fact that we might be raised eating meat and might find meat tasty and comforting. You know, the truth that it is a fact that cooking it does make it more like candy. You know, more pleasant to our senses. And but again, it's the Jew skin lampshade. Are you gonna read by that light? Are you gonna live by this idea that you're somehow entitled to harm and destroy animals for the purpose of your comfort? Is there any kind of rational, logical, enlightened, educated, smart, knowledgeable philosophy that can defend that? Or are they just lies? They're just going to keep lying and pretend it's not Jew skin. So, again, you know, to call this growth. And then, like I said, at the end of this, I'll play some of it. It's just, I don't know why he has to inject this. It's just almost like baby talk. Let's find some emotional reason to pretend that our emotions are our enlightenment. That the road to enlightenment, our knowledge, is somehow through something that's going to be emotionally gratifying. That somehow you're going to be happy to learn its juice skin. That just isn't going to happen. And there's nothing native in it. And there's no native part of me that you can't exist as an animal, as an organism with a DNA that's got selfish genes in it, and have this expectation that you're going to find it rewarding in any real way to watch others succeed emotionally. You're only going to find that rewarding if, in the sense that you know about the juice skin thing, and you can somehow get rid of the juice skin or get rid of a negative or fix something, then that will be rewarding. You fixed your bigotry. You overcame your bigotry. That could be rewarding. But the reward is you're still going to be a bigot, and you're still going to feel a tendency and an attraction to those bigoted emotions, those self-interested emotions. You're still going to be looking for your angle. And yes, there'll be gratification every time you control your impulses. Every time maybe you say, hey, I don't have to have meat in this meal. I can eat something else. There's a whole bunch of other stuff to eat. I can eat that. I like a lot of other kinds of food. I can make all kinds of sandwiches. They don't have to have meat in them. And you do that and you can feel, hey, okay, I made an effort. I overcame an unnecessary impulse, a bad impulse, a hurtful impulse. And you can do it by not watching a TV show or not doing this or not doing that, and then you can feel good about that. But again, you're not feeling good because you love. You're feeling good because you're overcoming something you don't like, something you rationally should hate, which is your selfish nature. You should be embarrassed by your selfish nature because it is so irrational. It is so crass in its function. It's embarrassing. So yeah. So again, you're not going to find I'm just saying there's no easy road to the truth. There's no emotionally comforting road because the truth just doesn't have those elements in it. It's a sad and tragic story, and the real truth is all we have is how much of the sadness we can prevent in the future, and we don't have much else. It's just the truth.
To sort of draw away from themselves in order to come back to themselves. It's kind of like if you take a trip somewhere, right, and you come back, you kind of see your own dwelling with new eyes. To encounter another in their otherness is actually to be able to reappropriate yourself now in some new kind of way.
So, Babel, right? I mean, again, we can't feel somebody else's pain. We aren't going to see the struggle inside of them, the fears, the rest of it. We're not going to be able to know that, the context of what they are, what they're overcoming, and so we can know it. We can know somebody's paralyzed. We can see it. And we can say, gee, that's an awful lot to overcome. I mean, every day they have to do all of this extra work just to get just to function. And we could appreciate that they're fighting a harder fight than we're fighting. And but again, for what purpose again are we going to do this? To have sympathy, or are we going to be competing against them? Are we going to be, what's the context of the relationship you have to these others? Are these others satisfying your need for applause and gratification? Are they giving you feedback that's, strokes your ego? The relationship to the persons we encounter matters more, in a sense. Who's feeding on who, and how they're feeding, than any, I'd say for most people, than any real connection they're making between the fact that they're an existing thing, a struggling organism, trying to find not only utility in the world, but some people aren't trying, which is really disappointing. But one would suspect trying to maximize their function, and but like I said, tragically for most people, maximizing function just means what's in it for me. How many gold medals have I won? And there's absolutely just no other context. There's no other value appreciated. So they don't learn anything about others except how to exploit them, how to rape them, how to get what they want through them, how to sell them what they don't need. Vic.
And I think maybe I'll try to wrap this up with one of the issues I've been most interested in is the question of how important, how significant, or how crucial is this capacity to grow in, I guess it's using capacity twice there, but how does one learn to grow in one's range and depth of love? How do you do that? What
range and depth of love? So again, this how do you make black people look white? So they're more attractive or something, or something like you don't like something, you don't like short people, or you don't like that just doesn't do it for you. It doesn't impress you. It doesn't hit the little buttons inside of your sensibilities. So we're supposed to say, how do you grow? How do you manufacture taste buds? That change. And again, that's the problem here. I don't think you can do that. I don't think the expectation of taking our competitiveness out of us is going to work. I don't think the expectation that we can live without our ego is going to work. And the visceral desire problem, the fact that there is such a thing as an attractive woman and an unattractive woman, by your own standards, of course, but it exists, and it has nothing to do with rationality. It has nothing to do with love. I mean, it has nothing to do with anything reasonable. It's just a mechanical reaction of your biology through conditioning. And so, you just can't defeat that. I mean, that was another thing I struggled with when I started finding women desirable. And at around 13, or when I was a little bit older than the I hate myself kind of era, where I said I was an asshole, a selfish cunt, dealing with that fact that I didn't like how my brain was thinking, because all it was doing was scheming all the time, and I just didn't think it. I didn't think. I thought there was something fundamentally wrong, that's what I was doing. Because scheming didn't seem like a very brilliant thing. And then there was this realization to try not to be a schemer, but there was a real problem because I did notice this. There was a girl who was picked on because she had really huge breasts and blah 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 blah, and I became her friend, and we would sit on a rock in the woods and have conversations and stuff, and I wanted to find her attractive, but I just couldn't. I mean, it wasn't like she was hideous or anything. I mean, she was a little heavy and blah blah blah, but I just didn't. So as much as I liked her, that we could have conversation, it was very, it was a very, I liked her as a person, right? That stupid thing. Very good friend, blah blah blah, some kind of mush like that. But she wasn't physically attractive. And as much as my brain wanted that not to be a problem, I could not make it a problem. And so growing in love, what does that mean? We have to somehow deny who we are or what we are, which I don't think is possible. So all you can do is deal with the element of tragedy in this circumstance. That we have to play the game with these machines that are always going to end up running over rabbits or something. There's no way to have the action, without the amount. Let's see how to say this. It's just if you again, this is a thing where if you take it to its logical conclusion, you can sort of see that it's a negative gain. There's no way to have the gain without, you have to have the hunger before you can have the pleasure and blah blah blah, and that's the nature of this game. And so that's really the underlying fundamental tragedy. But I mean, even the idea of trying to conceive of passions that wouldn't be consistent with selfishness in these organisms seems a pretty unrealistic metamorphosis. So even if we could come up with a way of changing our conditioning by snapping our fingers, so to speak, you could be gay or not be gay, or choose your subjective sensibilities. You could undo the damage of your past and your experience, and you could choose what you're going to be made happy by, what kind of movie you're going to enjoy, or what kind of you could actually say, I want to be able to like this, or I want to be able to find this food tasty, and do it. Even if we could do that, I don't think there's still a way to manufacture that into any kind of constructive interaction, because it's still feeding organisms. It's still a consumption game. And it's always going to be an island. And that's a problem. Again, and I guess the biggest part of it would be the competition part. But so much of our psychology, so much of our ego is built out of this competitive nature. And if you take that nature out of us, I think you take the passion out. I think you take the cause and the hunger out, in a sense, and you strip us of any of that need that would compel you to fight for another day. I mean, we fight for another day because we need it, because we're not done, because we are hungry, because we're feeding. And without that feeding passion, I don't think there's a game. I'm saying the game is unethical. I'm saying the game is insufficiently productive to justify the expense of it. So yes, it's not a game worth playing. That intelligence knows you're always going to end up with Jew lampshades, so you might as well just say, forget it. Just turn off the lights. So anyway, but this is just such mush. I mean, this love thing. This is not proper philosophy. And it is an example of what's held us back, stopped us from growing, as civilized organisms is the fact that we keep reaching for pleasant dogma, heavens and hells, and mechanisms that are fair and that can create some sort of value gain, and that's not in the cards. And it's not even in those old cards. I mean, even these simple words, like I said, the word love has caused people more pain, than anything in the history of mankind, so to speak. The unrequited love is the tragedies of love are huge, and everybody talks about it like it's a wonderful word. It's like religion. Here's these religious people, and they have children, and what's their expectation? They know how hard it is not to fuck up and end up going to hell. I mean, strictly speaking, it doesn't sound like hell's highly populated. Like, most people don't get there. And so you're almost saying, it's okay, I'm going to have a kid and he's going to go to hell. He's not going to just get cancer and die. He's going to be tortured forever in hell. Because the truth is, my kid's probably not going to be good enough. He's probably not going to behave well enough to earn his seat next to Jeebus.
What would be the most profound way to experience love in all of its full ranges? And I want to be careful.
Yeah, well, you want to be careful, but it's just the silliest kind of concept. I mean, to experience love in all of its full ranges. I mean, what does that mean? Does that mean that you take a muscle relaxant on a pleasant day with a nice clear blue sky and there's some very high clouds, and the very high clouds always do really interesting things and really interesting patterns, so you fully involve yourself in the narrative being written by the clouds. This has something to do with your growth as a human on a planet full of pain. Yeah, I don't think so. I think you're just watching the pretty colors on the juice skin light shade.
Here, I don't mean it just in. See, I think it gets heard so differently than I think what I'm meaning. I don't just mean love of friends and family and stuff, like romantic love, something like that. That could be.
Again, well, what's the point? What's the point of using a word that has absolutely no meaning to somebody really rational, a grown-up? It's a child's word. Love is SpongeBob. It's a cartoon word. It's not something you talk about as if it's part of the real world. Little kids can talk about talking bears eating porridge. Grown-ups shouldn't.
In there, but it means love of the stranger, love of the enemy, love of the earth itself.
Again, love of what? The juice skin lampshade. I'm just saying this, to say love of nature itself or the world itself. I mean, love of all of the pain. Yeah. Why would you love pain? Why would you love torment and torture, horror, fear, agony? Sorry. It seems retarded to me.
Love of the mystery of one's own being and the fact of life.
Okay, again, so the fact of life, again, has to be in its honest context. It's not just fluffy butterflies. The butterflies are caterpillars. The caterpillars metamorphize. There's a truth to our existence. It's not just you're here and that's all you have to worry about. You want, you take. It's more complicated. And an honest context recognizes our origins. It recognizes the machine that built this, evolution. It recognizes that that mechanism doesn't build character. It builds the exact opposite. And the thing that gives us character, the thing that we have progressed from being ignorant animals, is that we are capable now of understanding the context. If we were descendant from lions, let's say lions were the ones that got intelligence first. They're overtly a carnivore. They're overtly hurtful in their function. You don't think intelligence would enlighten them that this is a Jew skin lampshade, that it's just not an acceptable way to get light, and that they have to find something else to do? They have to find a better way because the way nature gave them is crude, stupid, retarded, inefficient. It's not acceptable. It's unacceptable. You don't think a smart lion would come to that realization? And what I was going to do with this video was try to come up with a metaphor, because that's all you have to do, right? You have to keep just doing this storytelling. You have to make it visual or more tangible. And we can't think of things in terms of ourselves interacting with the world. So you have to turn it into some other experiment. So I always kind of convert to like a rat maze thing or something. So if you saw a rat maze, and there was a simple rule that, okay, one of the rats, just by genetic aberration, has little hooks on its hairs, and it collects morphine that just, let's say, it sticks to it. Okay, so there's morphine in the environment that nobody can get to, but it sticks to this one rat. And so the one rat, this has really gotten a little bit obtuse, so I should have thought about it ahead of time. Well, anyway, let's just say the one rat has the capacity to ease the pain now of other rats in distress. But the rat has no knowledge of that power. It doesn't know that it has this capacity to ease the pain. And so it goes through its life, and then it just squanders the morphine. It's let's say when it goes by a certain kind of bush, the berries fall off when the morphine gets stuck on the bush, and so it gets a little treat, it gets a little reward for collecting the morphine. Clearly we could understand that if I said, well, what if the rat did know, and he learned what the truth was, that he could fix the game for all the other rats. He could take them out of this, he could eliminate torture from the game simply by picking off the morphine and giving it to the other rats. A minor effort. And yes, he doesn't get his little treat now because he doesn't keep the morphine. The clear argument is that the game is a better game. It might be a maze game worth having if you can get the torture out of it. It's just the truth that the two outcomes between those two scenarios are qualitatively different. So this is to Anacondavod's arguments that there's no outcome difference. These outcomes are different, fundamentally different. And to Vic, that's the argument. The rat that collects the morphine has no physical obligation. He has no obligation by natural instinct. The obligation is a rational one. Once he has knowledge that his suffering is no bigger or more important than the other suffering, that it's the same thing. Fixing my pain is the same as fixing somebody else's pain in terms of the brain function. It's like the color red, we could say, is pain. The red over here and the red over there and the red over there is just as real red. And if I get rid of that red, it's the same as getting rid of this red. There's no difference. Rationally, as a grown-up, we can know that as a truth. We won't feel it as a truth. We'll always think, my pain is pain. Their pain is theoretical. We'll feel that way, but we'll know better. And I'm saying once you have knowledge, then you have responsibility to be fair to it, to be obedient to it. And the knowledge points clearly at the difference in the outcome. It clearly points to the fact that there is such a thing as a qualitative difference, and that it matters. And that's civilization. That's that's progress. That's growth. And I don't think you people are really having a very elevated, high-minded, smart conversation about what it is to be human, what it is to try to be civilized, what it is to wish and hope to implement progress. Those things require you to do this knowledge acquisition and to dispossess yourself of the fairy tale lies of Easter rabbits and Santa Clauses and other excuse making of childhood, the nonsense of youth, and deal with the real world where you know it's a Jew skin. Anyway, probably enough. I'm not going to play some more of this lovey-dovey bullshit.
It goes back to philosophy, right? I mean, I think in some way philosophy is about love, right? I mean,
okay, I mean, that's probably enough, right? Because it's in no way is it. It's exactly the opposite. The thinking process can't be blended into the feeling process for any other purpose than merely the acknowledgement that the feeling thing is a problem that needs to be dealt with by the thinking thing. The thinking thing has to deal with the feeling thing. It cannot incorporate. It cannot in any way benefit. Intelligence is not going to be improved by filtering it through your emotions. It won't help. It's exactly the other way around. Your emotions need to be filtered through your intelligence. Alright. So we'll play a little bit of this kind of wacky guy. So anyway, he's talking about how wonderful Eminence philosophy is, and then he says this.
He's just making some straw man, attacking some straw man nihilism. I mean, if you really understand what nihilism is, then you might argue that people like Benatar and in Mendham might be nihilists. It just depends on what you mean by nihilism. I mean,
no, it really doesn't. I mean, the word is closely associated with an absence of value significance, and the arguments made by Benatar and made by me are clearly arguments that value is highly important. The words good and bad are real concepts. They really exist. Nihilists don't believe those two words have a distinction. So it's just kind of silly for you to talk about this being a straw man. I mean, I don't know how you can understand the concept of nihilism in any other way. If you're not nihilizing value, then nihilism doesn't mean anything. You can't nihilize the difference between a car and a cat. That kind of nihilism won't work. So clearly the only way nihilism becomes even a word in our vocabulary is because people are nihilizing value. And clearly I and Benatar aren't doing anything close to that, so it would be silly to call us nihilist. It would be nonsensical, it's illogical, it's, talk about a straw man, that's a shit man. I mean, you just put a bunch of shit together and made it look like it was an argument. Because that isn't even straw, that's just shit. So, yeah, I don't know if I want to even watch the rest of this because that's just too stupid an argument. I mean, I've titles of videos with the word value in them. I can't be, I said value equation so many times. Nihilists don't have value equations. This is just a silly accusation. So he basically says somewhere in here that nihilism could be reasonable. It can't be reasonable unless you don't think the outcome of torture versus not torture has no meaning. Now, I don't think there's any person who doesn't think their own comfort matters, and it's illogical to think your comfort matters and other people's comfort doesn't. That you can only do with some kind of insanely made up rubbish of a philosophy where you somehow make other people synthetic and yourself real. And there's absolutely no evidence of that anywhere. So it's just made up. It would be thrown out of court as evidence because there's no evidence of it. It's like going to court with the Invisible Man or dark matter or Huygens or some other bullshit and saying they did it. There's no way you can make a rational argument defending it as a realistic description of reality. It's a silly, nonsensical, non-evidence-based, made-up, wishful desire. But that's all it can be. It's a cartoon. It's a SpongeBob. It's not a real thing. Enough of the video. Now, sorry, a bit long, a bit preachy even, a bit whatever the word is. I mean, I'm not being incredibly arrogant or I'm not being incredibly pompous, but there's something about it that's very demeaning where I'm saying, I know what growth is, and you people aren't even close. But the truth is, sorry, I think I can make the argument that there are so many fundamental truths of our existence, mostly centered around the process of evolution, that Professor Anton, Antikantavad, Vic, maybe even this guy, aren't acknowledging as real. Those truths spell shit. Or as I've said, crap, consumption, reproduction, addiction, parasitism. That's the world we live in. That's the nature of the organism. And that needs to be overcome if there's going to be something called progress or growth or an honest life. Yeah. Oakley doke. Now I'm done.